Alright, so welcome back to Flight Sim 2020 and welcome to something a little bit different, something new, because recently FS2Crew released their add-on for the fly-by-wire A320, and that's what we're going to be taking a look at today, because I've noticed in the forums, I've noticed online that a lot of users have been struggling with getting into the software for the first time. And this is happening for previous users of FS2Crew as well as new users. And the previous users are struggling because with this new version now for Flight Sim 2020, the interface has changed completely and the kind of methodology behind the software has changed completely. So today is not going to be a complete comprehensive guide into every single thing that this FS2Crew software offers, but basically what I want to do is get you up and running for the first time and get a better understanding of how to use this new interface, because you'll see when we take a look at it, all of the kind of tutorial, all of the instructions, all of the help is built into the interface itself. So once you figure out where to look for things and what it's actually telling you, this new version, this new interface is actually very simple to use. So when you first install it, it's most likely going to look something like this, which we have this tiny little window at the top here. And first things first, we need to just click on the little green button and we can now expand it and we get a bunch more options. So let's go and take a look first at the config. Again, I'm not going to go through every single thing in detail. I'm just going to mention a couple of things. So obviously your output device, this needs to be set to whatever device you want to hear the audio from FS2Crew. And the easiest way to test that is obviously just to click audio test.
Audio test complete. If
you hear the audio, you know it's in the correct place. If I mouse over this, this brings me to the first thing about this new interface. The PDF manuals, I was one of the people who read the manuals, but according to FS2Crew, a lot of people didn't. So they've replaced the big PDF manuals with these little tooltips. So if you go ahead and mouse over anything, it's going to tell you exactly what that feature is and possibly a little bit about what it actually does and when to choose it for certain situations. So we've got our audio options here. This side is all personal preference. This is accents for the different crew members. Now, here we start to get to the important stuff. So in this interface method, we have three options: button control, voice control, and auto respond. I haven't really played with auto respond yet. Voice control is how I've always used the software. I've been using FS2Crew for many years, back in FSX, and really happy to have it now in Flight Sim 2020. So button control, obviously you're going to use your action key to trigger events in the sim, and voice control, we can do it with voice recognition. So I'm going to set it on voice control. First big difference about the new FS2Crew compared to the older one is with the older one, it was always listening. Unless you had it on mute, then it wouldn't be listening to your microphone. Now, I really hope that they bring back that mute feature, because it was something that I used very often, and I'm sure there are other users out there who made use of that. Now, they've moved more towards a push-to-talk method of working. So they want you to use a push-to-talk key, which you can set over here. However, if you don't want to use push-to-talk, I like to have it listening so that I don't have to hold a key every time I want to give a command or respond to a checklist. If you just select this top option here, which is blank, now it will always be listening. We don't have the mute feature, so the problem is if I was speaking now, like I am to you, it's going to pick up all sorts of commands as I'm talking. So I've actually got a little workaround where I'm just using the mute button on my headset to mute my actual mic on the headset itself so that it's not picking up when I'm not speaking. So hopefully they bring back that mute feature, because I found that very useful, but I'm using that workaround for the moment. Right, all of these options down here are kind of just personal preference, or depends on the operator and the airline that you're flying for. So for example, Airbus specifies that you start engine 2 first. If you using or if you're flying for an operator that says start engine 1 first, you'll tick this option, and things like that. Packs of takeoff, climb flow at 18k, fuel weight in kgs. If you want it in pounds, you just leave that unticked. So this is all fairly simple and fairly self-explanatory. If you want to know more about it, put your mouse on it and it will give you some information about that. Right. Oh, and then over here we can change the opacity for this panel. So if I do go ahead and do that, you'll see this becomes a little less see-through. Once again, personal preference. Now, for this flight, this panel is going to take up quite a bit of space because I'm going to go through the assists and info panels in a bit. But once you learn how this actually works, you can have this minimized right down so it doesn't take up too much space on the screen. And if you have a second monitor, you can even drag that across to your other screen. I'm going to have it up here in front of us for the duration of this flight, just for the purposes of this tutorial. Okay, so I'll come back to assist and info. Kill, if you have any checklist or command that gets stuck or runs away, you can click on kill to terminate whatever action is currently stuck. Right, then PBE is going to open Pushback Express. If you have it, not covering Pushback Express in this tutorial, just looking at FS2Crew for the Airbus. So Pushback Express we'll look at in another video. Then moving on to PFE, which is your pre-flight events. If you've come from previous FS2Crew add-ons, you'll be very familiar with this. So if we jump into the cockpit quickly and we start these pre-flight events, it's going to start preparing the cabin automatically. So FS2Crew is giving us a virtual co-pilot, and our virtual first officer is going to perform automatically the functions that a first officer would perform during our flight, because obviously these airliners are not designed to be piloted single pilot. You always have a second pilot on board. And so FS2Crew is providing us a virtual co-pilot who's going to perform all of the functions, or most of the functions, of our first officer. So activating pre-flight events triggers a process that takes 30 minutes by default. And our first officer is going to start with things like getting power to the aircraft. So we'll see he's turned on the batteries, he's got the external power connected, and he's getting the APU up and running. Now, currently, this little indicator is red, which means we cannot speed up the process. If you don't want to sit for a full half an hour, you can speed this up by clicking on it. And as you click on it, you'll see it will change the number. But when it's red, it's because our first officer is currently busy with something and we cannot interrupt. So if I click on there, nothing happens now. We need to wait for that to go gray and then we can speed this up. Right, but while he's doing his flows, we're going to have work to do as well. But I want to jump back now to assists and info, because this is how you are going to learn to interact with the new interface. So up here at the top under our assists, it gives us 3 separate sections: checklist assist, voice command assist, and our flows assist. Flows is telling us, hey, these are the things you should consider doing during this phase of our flight. So as the captain, we should be looking at setting up the overhead. So for example, if we come up here now, our nav lights are on, our first officer did that, we should have APU bleed on. We can flip these over to nav, set up some lighting. I'm not going to go through all of the correct procedures and do everything 100% correctly for the Airbus in this tutorial. We're mostly just focusing on getting FS2Crew running and getting you familiarized with the interface. So we've done the overhead. Now it'll say, let's come down to our MCDU so we can set this up. Right, so he's out for the walk around. We've got our flight prepared in SimBrief, so I'm just going to load that. Normally with my flights that I upload on my channel when I stream, obviously, there's no edits because I like to show the entire thing. This is going to be a bit different. I'm going to cut this video down to make it as clear and concise as possible. So I'll cut down gaps where there's nothing to say while we're waiting for things. So you will most likely see some edits in this video, and that's the reason for that. Okay, let's get ADIA's aligning. We'll go here, set our departure, and we're doing APDAC 1 Bravo. Let's just insert that quickly. Again, I'm not going through any of the correct procedures. I'm just getting this done nice and quickly. And we have 9.5 on board. So we'll dial that in. That's all good. We're doing flaps 2 and flexing to 50. Let's go ahead and get our V speeds. Right, so that's all done. So using the flows assist, we can see we should have done overhead. We've done that. We've done MCDU. Set up the FCU, which is this guy here. So let's get some lights on this as well. We'll dial this up a bit. Okay, we're going up to 35,000 feet. And we want constraint on, and let's do QNH as well. And set up the center console. So we want all of these guys on auto. Give us some lighting. And this we'll put in, no. Right.
I'm back. No issues on the walk around.
Okay, he's back from the walk around. Now, the next part I'm going to speak about is the info center down here. Both of these sections update dynamically depending on the phase of the flight you're in. So you'll see it's just updated now as he's finished his, as our first officer has finished his flow. And this information center at the bottom is giving us all of the information that we need on checklists, on flows. And like I said, it's going to update based on the phase of flight, but we can always select something down here if we want to find out more. So if I want to know what autopilot commands I can give using voice, I can click on this and we can see we get a list of all of the different autopilot commands. So this section is going to be very useful. If you need to look for something specific, obviously you just click on the section that you're looking for, but otherwise it's going to update as we go through our flight and tell us or give us information on what we should be doing to interact with FS2Crew. So now we have voice command assists that have popped up. So this is telling us what flows we should be performing, and it's up to you to know, what you have to do to set up the overhead. That you're going to learn from the manuals and the checklist that you get from the aircraft itself. So it's up to us to know what those flows are and what to do. Otherwise, if we move on to voice command assist, this is telling us, okay, these are the voice commands you should think about giving at this point, and they appear in order. So now that the aircraft is set up, let me quickly go and just do some brightness here quickly. Now that the aircraft is set up, we can start thinking about getting ATC clearance. And our first officer will do that for us when we ask him to do so. Just bear in mind that this doesn't interface with something like VATSIM or the built-in ATC or anything like that. It's purely an aesthetic thing. So let me go and mute my mic and we can ask him to do that for us. Request ATC clearance.
Clearance delivery. Good morning. It's...
Okay, and now all I'm going to do is as soon as he's done with that, I'm just going to follow those voice command assists in the order that they appear. And this is going to help you to learn how to use this new FS2Crew system. Once you've learned all of these and you know what's coming, you've done a few flights, you know what to expect, you know what to say, then you can go ahead and hide all of this without having this in your way. But this is going to be very useful for getting you up and running in those first few flights while you're learning the interface. Check the box.
Okay.
Are you ready for the takeoff briefing? Okay, in reality, he would be getting ready, getting his charts and everything that he needs to check.
Okay.
So we're going to wait for him to say okay, and that he's ready. And then we can go ahead and do the takeoff brief. Important to mute your mic or not hold down the push to talk key while you're doing this so that you don't give any erroneous commands. So he's now said he's ready. So we would go through the brief. I'll just do something very quick. We're departing off runway 03 left. It'll be full length departure and we're doing AFDAC 1 Bravo. All of that is entered into our MCDU. So we're good to go. Any questions?
No questions.
We've done with everything that FS2Crew suggests we get through up to this point in the flight. So now we can see 21 minutes left before we should be departing. So I'm going to go speed this up, show you how that works.
The security and safety checks.
And we have the crew asking us something.
Boarding?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, and we can once again speed this up a little bit more. So let's move it down until we have 2 minutes left. And you can see the interactions happening. Those will stack up and they will wait if you speed up. The one thing you do need to be aware of is if you trigger something that happens after. So for example, if I did this last command, these all actually belong to the same response, which is to getting the load sheet. But if I did the last one and there was some before that, it's going to move us onto that phase of flight. So you might lose some of the assistance that you're getting. So try and do things in the correct order. Be careful of speeding things up too quickly, especially in the beginning when you're learning the system, because you don't want to skip too far ahead and miss things, because it's not going to then remind you to do them because it assumes you've already gotten to that point. So just something to be aware of. Thank you.
No problem. Have a safe flight.
All right, so now we have our first checklist assist, and it's saying at this point, we are ready to start the before start checklist. You can call for these checklists at any point.
Guys,
it's not like the
all flights are
older
on board.
FS2
Are we
Crew.
clear to close?
Yes?
Thanks. Let me know if you need anything.
Okay, it's not like the older FS2 Crew software where the checklist would only trigger in the correct order. Now you can call for the checklists whenever, and I've just made the mistake that I mentioned earlier. So I did this on purpose because I knew that responding yes to the crew would assume we'd already done that before start checklist. So now you can see it's wanting us to continue below the line in the before start checklist, even though we haven't started it. So just be careful, like I said, with the advancing too far ahead. Try and do things in the correct order. If it pops up here and says do this checklist and then recommends a voice command, do the checklist first. I've done this to demonstrate that it's not that much of an issue as long as you remember what what came before and what you need to still catch up on, because in this new version we can ask for the checklists at any point. So let's do that. Before start checklist.
Cockpit prep.
Completed.
Completed. Gear
Now,
pins and covers.
Gonna pause there for a little bit. Just to show you, in the checklist assist now, it gives you the options that you have for the response to whatever challenge he's mentioned in whichever checklist you're currently doing. The kind of correct answer, I guess, will always appear at the top. You may have multiple options, which we'll see just now. If there are multiple, choose whichever one is more appropriate, and that will advance the checklist once it's recognized. If for whatever reason, and this does happen with some of them, you'll probably see it happen in this video, if for whatever reason your voice recognition doesn't recognize a specific response, you can always say set and check, and that will advance the checklist to the next item. Okay, so let's move on. Removed.
Signs.
On and auto.
ADOs.
Nav.
Fuel quantity.
9,500 kgs.
Takeoff data.
Set.
Baro ref.
1024 set.
1024 set. Down to the line.
Below the line.
Windows and doors.
Closed.
Closed. Beacon.
On.
Thrust levers.
Idle.
Parking brake.
Set.
Before start checklist complete.
Request pushback and start clearance.
Ground. Requesting pushback and start clearance. Okay, cleared to push and start.
Cabin crew arm slides and cross check. Okay, so now I'm just going to use the built-in pushback to get us quickly on the move here. Right, and now we're going to follow this process here. So we're going to say starting engine 2. Well, first we'll flip this over to start. We'll say starting engine 2 once pushback has commenced. Let's just release the parking brakes for him. And then we'll follow this process. So we'll do starting engine 2, wait for that to be stable. We'll then start engine 1. Once they're both stable, the trigger for the first officer, so like it mentions down here, we've got some info. It says the trigger for the first officer to begin their after start flow is when we set our engine mode selector back to normal. So we'll make sure we'll do that once both our engines are stable, and then we will perform our flows. So we'll switch off the APU and APU bleed. We would set up anti-ice, obviously not required today, and then we'll call for the after start checklist once both of us are done with our flows. So let's go and do that now. Starting engine 2.
Check.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
It's a nice early morning flight here. We're going from Johannesburg, OR Tambo, down to Durban, King Shaka.
Safety information. There is an instruction card in your seat pocket that illustrates the safety equipment on board this aircraft. Regulations require compliance with this information as well as all crew instructions.
Okay, so now we're just waiting for engine 2 to spool up and stabilize.
Fasten your seatbelt by inserting the metal tip into the buckle. Tighten by pulling on the belt. To release your seatbelt, lift the metal flap on the buckle. It is our policy that you keep your seatbelt fastened at all times while seated. Doors are clearly marked with exit signs and instructions for door operation. Each door is equipped with an escape slide. Locate the nearest exit to you and note that the nearest exit may be behind you. In an emergency, lights will illuminate the aisle. The cabin is pressurized. If there is a loss of cabin pressure, a panel will open and oxygen masks will appear. Remain seated with your seatbelt fastened and pull a mask towards you to start the flow of oxygen. Oxygen will be flowing.
Okay, so engine 2 is stable.
The bag may not inflate.
Starting engine
Cover
1.
your nose and mouth with a mask. Place the elastic band around your head and tighten by pulling on the end. Secure your own mask before assisting others. Your life jacket is located under your seat. Tighten the straps and once outside the aircraft, pull on the tabs to inflate your jacket. If the jacket fails to inflate, use the tube placed near the neck. Your jacket is equipped with a light that will automatically...
Right, so once we flip that engine mode selector over to normal, first officer will quickly start their flow, so they're going to arm the ground spoilers, set the rudder trim to 0, set the takeoff flaps.
Reading light buttons are located over your head. Thank you very much for your attention.
So the takeoff flaps and trim will be read from our MCDU. Right, so engine 2 is stable. Let's now continue. So we'll flip this over and you'll see a little red indicator letting us know that he has started his flow. Also at the top we have active checklist. That's going to let you know if you have a checklist currently running. This becomes important, for example, when you get to a below the line point where you have to wait for something like crossing 10,000 feet, which may be a few minutes before you carry on with the rest of the checklist. You can always see if there's a checklist that is currently active and waiting for you to trigger something by looking at the top here. Okay, so let's flip this over. And we'll go ahead and sort out APU. NCR is not required. That's all good. After start checklist.
Anti-ice.
Off.
ECAM status.
Checked.
Pitch trim.
23% set.
Rudder trim.
0.
After start checklist complete.
Flight controls check.
Ready.
Okay, so now we're just going to test the flight control, so we'll move... oops, I did the wrong. I'm supposed to do up and down first.
Full up.
Just wait for him to respond to what we're doing.
Full down. Neutral. Full left. Full right. Neutral.
Rudder.
Full left. Full right. Neutral.
Okay. So he's going to do his flight controls check now, and you can see the indicator moving. He will only do this if we are stationary. If we're moving, the first officer will not do their flight controls check because obviously it's going to steer the plane all over the place. Now we move on to the taxi flow.
Flight attendants, please prepare for takeoff.
And we are pretty much ready to go now. Request taxi clearance.
Ground. Good morning. It's ready to taxi. Cleared to taxi.
Clear left side.
Clear right side.
Brake check.
Pressure 0.
Before takeoff checklist.
Flight controls.
Checked.
Checked. Flight instruments.
Checked.
Checked. Briefing.
Confirmed.
Flap setting.
Config 2.
Config 2. V1, VR, V2, flex temp.
Flexing 50 degrees.
V1, 1, 2, 2, VR, 1, 2, 3, V2, 1, 2, 7, flex temp, 50 degrees, ATC.
Set.
Ecam memo.
Takeoff no blue.
Down to the line.
Okay, so here's an example of having an active checklist. We are waiting to continue with the below the line items, but we need to get to the runway and be ready to take off before we do that. The other thing you'll notice is that the voice recognition doesn't pick up my commands first time every time. Sometimes it helps just to say it a couple of times, maybe try saying it slightly differently. Over time, the Windows voice recognition does learn your voice, and so it should improve in accuracy the more you use the product. Below the line.
Approach path, clear of traffic. Cabin crew.
Advised.
TCAS.
TARA.
Engine mode selector.
Normal.
PAX.
On.
Before takeoff checklist complete.
Ready?
Ready.
Takeoff.
Check. Thrust set.
Flex SRS runway. Checked.
V1, rotate. Positive climb.
You're up.
Button 1123, you were not cleared to take off.
Autopilot 1 on.
Gear up.
Managed climb. Flaps 1.
Speed checked. Flaps 1.
0.
Speed checked. Flaps 0.
After takeoff, climb checklist.
Landing gear.
Up,
Flaps.
retracted,
Packs.
on,
Down to the line.
clear rad nav.
Okay.
Seatbelts off. Below the line.
Barrow ref.
Standard set.
Standard set. After takeoff, climb checklist complete.
Okay, so there I've just run through everything with you from the takeoff until the end of the climb checklist, and now there's not much left for us to do, especially in terms of FS2Crew, until we need to start descending again. So I'm going to cut the video here, and you'll join me again when we are ready for the descent. Okay, so we're just in a nice bumpy cruise here. We're about to prep for our descent into Durban, so let's start going through our voice commands. You have control.
I have control.
I've actually already filled out the MCDU, so that's done. Auto brake, we will use low is fine for this. Okay, so our briefing, we're landing runway 06, and we're doing the APMAT arrival. I think it's 1. Doesn't really matter. Okay. So, that. Are you ready for the approach briefing? Are you ready for the approach briefing?
Ready.
Any questions?
No questions.
I have control.
You have control.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is let me demonstrate how we would use one of these. So let's say we want to descend now to 3,000 feet. So let's say altitude 3,000 pull. Yeah, so he's going to now dial that in and then pull our altitude knob so that we start our descent to 3,000 feet. We have it. And now we're descending Durban. So while that descent is happening, because there's not much left for us to do until we hit around 10,000 feet, I want to go through a couple of the questions. So the first issue that a lot of people have had is if you are getting a WASM error. So that's WASM. That's the system that FS2Crew uses to communicate with the simulator. If you get a WASM error every time you open FS2Crew, simple fix, and this worked for me. Okay, so you need to come here to your community folder and find these two FS2Crew folders. If they are in your community folder, delete them and reinstall FS2Crew. If they're not there, then just reinstall FS2Crew and it should place them there, and that should clear up any WASM errors, especially if you had a previous version of Pushback Express. You have to have the new version 2.2 Installing that will fix this issue. Otherwise, installing FS2Crew from scratch will fix your problem, as long as those two folders are in the community folder. Then the other thing to remember is always start Flight Sim and then launch FS2Crew. The simulator needs to already be running when you launch FS2Crew for it to work correctly. Okay, so we're approaching 10,000 feet, so we're going to do some commands here. Full speed 210 knots. Okay, so that's going to set the speed to manual and set it at 210. We're a little high still at the moment. I was busy reading stuff. Started descending earlier, but anyway. Our first officer will sort out lights and things as we pass 10,000 feet. Looks like we're going to go nicely into the clouds here as well. Clouds aren't too thick, we can see through them at some point, so we shouldn't be in the soup for too long. He's turned on the landing lights. Flaps 1.
Speed checked. Flaps 1.
Heading 010. Speed 180. Flaps 2.
Speed checked. Flaps 2.
At heading 030.
$1,000 to go.
Bomb approach. It heading 040. Down.
Gear down.
Manage speed. Full speed 180. Full speed 180. Set speed 160.
Radar altimeter alive.
Laps 3.
Speed checked. Flaps 3.
Full.
Speed checked. Flaps full.
QNH 1012 set. Landing checklist.
Cabin crew.
Advised.
Auto thrust. Auto brake.
Flight attendants, please prepare for landing.
ECAM memo.
Landing no blue.
Landing checklist complete.
Okay, so I'm not sure why the aircraft didn't go into approach mode. That's probably because I messed around with the arrival, but yeah, I haven't been talking very much, and I'm not going to talk very much from here on until we are setting the runway. So we've done the landing checklist. Everything is good to go.
1,000. 1,000.
H1012 set.
$500, 400, 100 above.
And
Minimum.
continue.
Checked.
$100, 50, 40, 30, 20, retard, 10, 5,
Spoilers. Reverse brake descent. 70 knots.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the conclusion of our flight. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened until the captain has turned off the seatbelt sign and the aircraft.
After landing checklist.
This will be your indication that it's
Corrected.
safe to move around the cabin,
Spoilers.
gather your belongings
Sound.
and disembark.
APU.
We'd like to thank you for flying with us
Start.
today. We appreciate your
Radar.
business and we hope to
Off.
see you once again on a future
Predictive
flight. Thank you.
wind shear system.
Off.
After landing checklist complete.
Shutdown engine 2. Taxi light off. Okay, so let's go through. Off, which it is. Parking brakes on, we can turn off. Can turn off. Can disarm slides and cross check. Parking checklist.
APU bleed.
On.
Engines. Seat belts.
Off.
Exterior lights.
Have logo on.
Fuel pumps.
Off.
Parking brake and chocks.
Set. On and out.
Parking checklist complete.
Securing the aircraft checklist.
ADIRS.
Off.
Oxygen.
Off.
APU bleed.
Off.
Emergency exit light.
Off.
Sight.
Off.
APU and battery.
Off.
Securing the aircraft checklist complete.
Alright, well, thank you so much for watching this tutorial slash flight with the FS2Crew for the fly-by-wire A320. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you out and at least gets you up and running with FS2Crew for the A320 in Flight Sim 2020. And once again, I'm not officially associated with fly-by-wire or with FS2Crew, but if you ask questions, I will be more than happy to do my best to try and answer them. This was never intended to be a comprehensive run through of everything that FS2Crew offers, but rather just a starting point to get people up and running with the software. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.